Dear all, welcome to the class of International Economics. Today in this video, we are discussing the limitations of Hector-Arlen theory. In the last few videos, we have discussed what is Hector-Arlen theory and what is factor price equalization theory and what is its importance. Factor price equalization theorem is also a corollary to the HO theory. Hector-Arlen theory has many advantages because it could explain trade in different manner, because it could explain why there is a comparative advantage. That's why it's also known as modern theory. But still, HO theory has some limitations. So its first limitation, that is Leontief Paradox, which is a famous paradox developed by Leontief. So through this video, we will explain what is Leontief Paradox, what is factor intensity reversal, and what are the other limitations of HO theory. What is Leontief Paradox? Leontief was a famous economist and he has made an empirical test on HO theory, whether this Hector-Arlen theory is valid or not. So he has made that empirical test in USA, okay, and he has taken the data of 1947 and he has made this analysis and empirical test in 1951. It was the main aim of this empirical test was to check whether this Hector-Arlen theory holds true or not. But the finding was, it was very interesting. USA exports labor intensive goods and import capital intensive goods. This was the finding. But USA, being a capital abundant country, must export the capital intensive goods and import labor intensive goods. So it is a direct opposite of what HO theory said. HO theory said, since US is a capital abundant nation, they should export capital intensive commodity and import labor intensive commodity. But when one empirical test was done in US case, the result was amazing or interesting because just opposite of HO theory. US exports more labor intensive goods and import more capital intensive goods. So this is a paradox. Paradox as far as the HO theory is concerned, just opposite of HO theory. That's why we are calling as paradox. This paradox is known as Leontief Paradox, which negates the HO theory. Okay, this Leontief and also has won Nobel Prize. I think it is in 1977. By considering the contributions to the trade theories. So he became very famous. So why he has said like that? He has tested, what kind of commodities US is exporting and what kind of commodity US is importing, whether it is capital intensive or labor intensive. And firstly, he has taken the data of 1947. Okay, so he has divided here. The graph is given there. And in exports how much capital is used, and in export how much labor is used, and what is the capital per worker ratio, means how much capital is used per worker, that is also given. Then there you can see that as far as the 1947 data, capital per worker is low in exports. It was around 40,000 something compared to import substitute. in import substitute, a capital per worker ratio was high. It means that the import substitutes are more capital intensive than exports. Why he has taken import substitutes? Because he actually wants to take imports, but he didn't get the data of imports. That's why he has taken the data of import substitutes. So he found out that the import substitutes are more capital intensive than exports. Okay, so this is a very interesting result, and he also had made the same analysis in 1951. In that period also, the result was almost same, but the difference has reduced. The exports, capital per worker year was 12,000 around, and import substitutes was 13,000. It means that the import substitutes are more capital intensive than exports, just opposite of HO theory. And also Baldwin also has done this same analysis. He also found out that there is import substitutes are more capital intensive. So this is became very interesting analysis and finding, and it started more debates on this topic. Then Leontief himself has given one or two explanation why there is a tendency like this. He said that the labor is 3 times more productive than foreign labor in US. It might be because of that. Because there is a labor and also capital. What we are saying, they are importing more of capital, or they have more import substitutes of capital intensive commodities, but they are exporting labor intensive commodities. Okay, then he said that the labor are more productive, even 3 times more productive than any other foreign country or foreign labor. That's why it may be because of that they are exporting more labor intensive commodities. But he said that it is he himself has rejected that idea, because he also later he said that the capital also very productive in US, not only the labor. So we can't make that analysis. So he himself has rejected that idea. Okay, secondly, he said that it might be because of the demand for capital goods are high in US. That's why they are importing more capital intensive commodities. The demand for capital intensive products are more high or more. That's why it might be because of they are importing more capital intensive products. But this is also not true, as Hauthaker in 1957 he rejected this idea by analyzing the household consumption pattern in US. He said that it is also not true. So the two explanations which Leontief himself has given for this paradox is rejected, one by himself and another by Hauthaker. Then what would be the source of Leontief paradox? Why there is a paradox? Why HO theory holds not true? Holds not true in the US case. So some of the other economists also has explained this. They some of them has explained it might be because of he has taken the data of 1947, because it's just a post World War period. So there might be some anomalies in the economy, so we can't take as a normal year. So it might be the reason. So he considered that, and he made the analysis in 1952 also, but the same results. Okay, so it is not because of the changes in the year, or it not because of in just post World War period. So secondly, there is another argument that this theories assumed, or HO theories assumed, a two-factor world which required assumptions, which is a required assumption, and ignored the natural resources. So if the HO theory hold true, two-factor world is a required assumption. What are the two factors? Capital and labor. They didn't consider any other factors like land or the natural resources might be another factor, but they didn't consider that. That's why they are saying that HO theory holds true because of they are considering only two factors. And in the Leontief paradox also, Leontief also used only two factors, didn't consider any other factors. That's why there is a paradox. Yeah, it can be. It is a good explanation for that. Third one, it is a tariff policy. Most heavily protected industries in US were labor intensive industries. So they reduce the imports and increase the domestic production of labor intensive goods. There is a high tariff. We will discuss different types of tariff in the future, but there is a tariff policy, and it was applicable to the labor intensive industries. So it was heavily protected. So that's why labor intensive commodities reduced the import of labor intensive commodity, and they started making a domestic production, and they started export of labor intensive commodities. That might be another reason. Then another explanation for Leontief bias, that is only physical capital is included here as capital, not the human capital. Human capital means the human might be more productive by getting more skill and also training and all through education. So the labors might be more efficient. That's why there is a important to consider human capital. But here only capital, physical capital is included. That might be the reason for this paradox or this Leontief paradox bias. Okay, so these are the different explanation why there is a paradox. Okay, so this is all about the Leontief paradox. So there are some other limitations also for HO theory. Secondly, first is Leontief paradox. Secondly, factor intensity reversal. What was the assumption of about the factor intensity in HO theory? HO theory says that X is labor intensive in both nations, and Y is capital intensive in both nations. But is there any guarantee that this assumption will be true always? No, it may not be true. There might be a situation in a given country, one product labor intensive, one commodity might be labor intensive in one country, and the same commodity might be capital intensive in another country. Okay, so there might be changes in the technology also. So one product or one commodity is labor intensive in one country, and it is capital intensive in another country. So there might be factor intensity reversal. It might be opposite. So this is also one limitation of Heckscher-Ahlen theory. There are some other restrictions. That is, first one is restrictive. In HO theory, they have considered, Heckscher and Ahlen has considered only two commodities, two countries, and two factors. There is not any possibility of any other natural resources or any other factors. Then unrealistic assumptions. Some of the assumptions are unrealistic. Ahlan theory also assumes no qualitative differences in factors of production, identical production function, constant returns to scale, homogeneous labor, etc. So these all assumptions, they are unrealistic assumptions. Now there is a possibility of increasing returns and decreasing returns, and labors may not be homogeneous. Okay, one labor might be different in the productive capacity with another. Okay, and there may not be identical production function. So these all are the unrealistic assumptions. And it is one-sided theory. One-sided theory means only supply-sided theory, not demand-sided theory. If the demand forces are significant, a capital abundant country will export labor intensive goods as the price of capital will be high due to the high demand for capital. Okay, so the price of the commodities might be different according to the demand changes, but here we have considered the cost. Cost is a part of supply. Okay, production. So it is a supply side, not the demand side. Demand side is completely ignored in this theory. Then other limitation is static in nature. It does not include any dynamic dynamic change. Like Ricardian theory, the HO model is also static in nature. The theory based on given state of economy and given production function does not accept any change. So it does not talk what will be the change if there is a change, and what will be the cause of action. It does not explain that kind of change. That's why it is a static in nature. So these are the assumptions of these are the limitations, and also Wigenholz's criticism. Wigenholz says that it is not the factor prices that determine the cost, but it is the commodity prices. It is not the factor prices that determine the cost and commodity prices, but it is the commodity prices that determine the factor prices. Okay, in HO theory, what we have said that the capital is abundant. That's why the X is cheap there. Labor is abundant, and labor is very cheap. So with that cheap labor, they are producing X, and X is also cheap before the trade. So the starting is from cost to the prices of commodities, but Wigenholz says that it is not from a cost or the factor prices to the commodities, but it is reverse. The commodity prices that determine the factor prices. Suppose if we have one watch. If this watch is priced very high, it is 5,000 rupees or 3,000 rupees, then automatically the laborers who produce this watch also will be, their return also will be high, the wages will be high. So according to Wigenholz, the connection is coming from watch to the laborers. If the watch price is high, labor's wages also will be high. But in HO theory, if the wages is high, then the watch price also will be high. So there is a reverse reverse connection according to Wigenholz. Then here the consumer's demand is ignored, and consumer's demand is not at all considered in determining the price of the commodities. Then there is a Heberle's criticism. It is based on, this theory is based on partial equilibrium approach, and it fails to give a complete and comprehensive and general equilibrium analysis. So there are other factors neglected, like the theory neglects the factors like technology and technique of production, natural factors, different qualities of labor, and all these factors are neglected in this theory. But still, even though there are some limitations for this theory is known as modern theory of international trade, because it has its own importance. It was the correctly explain why there is a comparative advantage. So even though with all this limitation, this theory have importance. That's why we are studying elaborately what is HO theory and what are the limitations of this theory. So I think this is clear for you. So the references, Dominic Salvatore will be enough, and Dwivedi and Rana Verma also can be followed. So thank you very much for listening me all this throughout this video. Thank you.